news, the ongoing trade negotiations have hit another snag as delegates struggle to find common ground on key agricultural tariffs.
Breaking news tonight, the Senate has just passed the controversial new legislation.
We're live in Washington with the latest developments on the escalating situation.
Ugh, you have got to be kidding me.
You know, Buster, I always thought the end of the world would be louder. Turns out it just sounds like this. The big silence.
Area, what caused the blackout?
Grid overload due to excessive heat demand, according to initial reports. But Mark, the timing is curious. Peak AI training cycles often coincide with grid stress events.
The next day, the lights came back on. The official story was grid overload. What's consuming so much power?
Area, show me the real numbers on AI energy consumption.
According to the International Energy Agency, global electricity demand from data centers could double between 2022 and 2026, primarily driven by AI adoption. Goldman Sachs estimates that data center power demand will increase 165% by the decade's end. GPT-3 one-off training run consumed roughly 1 to 2 gigawatt-hours of electricity, enough to power 120 to 130 American homes for a year.
Think about that, Buster. The energy cost of teaching a machine to think. What does this mean for our power grid?
The U.S. grid would need to quintuple its long-distance transmission capacity within a decade. Goldman Sachs estimates $720 billion in grid upgrades required through 2030. Without action, 60% of new data center load will be served by natural gas plants, directly undermining climate goals.
What about renewables? Solar and wind?
There's a critical challenge called additionality. When tech companies buy power from existing wind or solar farms, they're reallocating existing supply, not creating new clean energy. The public grid fills the gap with fossil fuels. Data centers require 99.999% reliability, constant baseload power. Solar and wind are intermittent, weather-dependent. Energy storage helps but adds significant cost, often excluded from cost comparisons. The question becomes, what can provide carbon-free, 24/7 power at scale?
And their answer is nuclear.
Specifically, small modular reactors, factory-built, designed for the digital age. Unlike renewables, nuclear provides unwavering reliability and dispatchability, offering baseload power that's both carbon-free and weather-independent.
But who's really paying for this nuclear renaissance?
The U.S. nuclear industry was built on federal investment, approximately $98 billion in R&D spending between 1948 and 2000, with an additional $19 billion from 2001 to 2020. Current programs include the Department of Energy's Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program, which has committed $4.6 billion to projects like TerraPower's Natrium reactor.
That's substantial public investment.
Beyond direct funding, taxpayers subsidize uranium mining on federal lands through royalty-free mining, special tax breaks worth $1 billion over 5 years, and reduced tax rates on decommissioning funds, totaling $10.6 billion from 2001 to 2020.
But don't all energy sources get subsidies?
Renewables subsidies exceeded $16 billion annually in recent years. Solar and wind receive significant investment tax credits and production tax credits. The question isn't whether to subsidize energy, but which technologies best serve long-term climate and security goals while providing reliable baseload power.
So it's not unique to nuclear.
No. What's unique is the Price-Anderson Act, first passed in 1957, which limits the nuclear industry's liability per incident, currently on the order of about $15 to $16 billion. Beyond that cap, Congress would decide whether and how much extra compensation to provide. In simple terms, the law helps protect nuclear companies from the worst financial losses in a disaster, while the government and the public may shoulder the biggest risks beyond that cap. Public de-risking does not guarantee success. The NuScale carbon-free power project was offered up to $1.4 billion in federal cost-share support from the Department of Energy, yet it was ultimately canceled after NuScale's projected plant costs rose from about $3.6 billion in early estimates to roughly $9.3 billion in a later cost estimate. Private investors eventually stepped back from the carbon-free power project, leaving taxpayers exposed to the consequences of its failure. Federal oversight officials have cautioned that expanding loan guarantees and similar support for large energy projects could create massive new risks to taxpayers if borrowers default, underscoring the stakes of public backing when projects do not proceed as planned.
So the public absorbs the risk.
While private investors capture potential rewards. However, this model isn't unique to nuclear. Similar structures exist for renewable energy, electric vehicles, and semiconductor manufacturing. It's industrial policy. Government de-risks emerging technologies deemed strategically important.
But something changed. These tech companies started making their own deal.
Microsoft has signed a 20-year power purchase agreement with Constellation to restart 3 Mile Island Unit 1, projected to add $16 billion to Pennsylvania's GDP. Google partnered with Kairos Power for up to 500 megawatts of advanced SMR capacity. Amazon is spending $20 billion on data centers, including one directly connected to the Susquehanna nuclear plant.
Why the sudden corporate interest?
These aren't just energy purchases, they're market-making investments. Long-term PPAs provide the financial certainty that makes capital-intensive nuclear projects bankable for other investors. When trillion-dollar companies sign 20-year contracts, it creates powerful demand signals that de-risk projects for lenders and attract additional private capital. Without these corporate commitments, many projects wouldn't proceed.
What's this behind-the-meter approach?
Direct connections between data centers and power plants, bypassing the congested public grid. This can shave years off development timelines, critical for AI companies operating on rapid expansion cycles. However, it raises questions about equitable energy distribution. Amazon's Susquehanna deal faces federal scrutiny as the first such case before FERC, with concerns about wealthy corporations securing direct access to clean energy, while public grids rely on older, dirtier sources.
Explain these small modular reactors. What makes them different?
SMRs are significantly smaller than conventional nuclear plants, typically under 300 megawatts electric compared to 1,000 plus MWE for large reactors. They're designed for factory fabrication and modular construction. Over 80 SMR concepts are under development globally, ranging from water-cooled to molten salt and gas-cooled designs.
And they're safer?
Advanced passive safety systems rely on natural physics, gravity, convection, thermal expansion to shut down and cool reactors without human intervention or external power. For example, NuScale's design places the reactor vessel in a pool where natural convection cools it indefinitely, even during a complete power loss. Some designs can operate 30 years without refueling, reducing fuel handling risks. Many can be sited underground for enhanced security.
How do they compare to other energy sources?
Against fossil fuels, nuclear produces 5.1 to 12 grams of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt-hour over its life cycle, comparable to wind, one-third that of solar, dramatically lower than coal at 820 grams or gas at 490 grams. Nuclear fuel is energy-dense. Years of supply can be stored on-site, providing energy security independent of volatile fuel markets.
What about renewables?
Nuclear offers 24/7 dispatchable power with exceptional land efficiency, 240 watts per square meter compared to solar's 6.63 and wind's 1.84. Solar requires 46 times more land and 17 times more materials than nuclear for equivalent energy output. However, wind and solar have lower upfront costs and deployment times of 1 to 3 years versus 5 to 10 years for SMRs, including licensing.
So there are trade-offs.
Always. The question is which trade-offs society prioritizes: speed versus reliability, distributed versus centralized, intermittent versus baseload.
Can SMRs actually power data centers effectively?
The timeline story is complex. SMR construction itself takes 2 to 5 years. Designs like GE Hitachi's BWRX 300 target 2 to 3 years. That's dramatically faster than traditional reactors, which average 6 to 7 years of construction. However, planning, licensing, and regulatory review add several years before construction begins. Total timeline from concept to operation typically spans 5 to 10 years, longer than data center deployment cycles of 3 to 5 years.
So timing remains a challenge.
There's also the first-of-a-kind penalty. Early units take longer due to supply chain ramp-up and learning curves. The GE Hitachi BWRX 300's first unit is scheduled for 2029, but subsequent units should deploy faster. SMRs need consistent baseload demand, while data centers have dynamically fluctuating loads. Some advanced designs can load follow, ramping output up or down, but that adds complexity.
We can't talk about nuclear without addressing the accidents.
3 Mile Island's 1979 partial meltdown created lasting public distrust, despite no radiation-related casualties. Chernobyl in 1986 cost over $100 billion in cleanup and displaced 350,000 people permanently. Fukushima in 2011 led to $200 billion in costs and 164,000 evacuated residents, with 51 deaths directly from evacuation stress rather than radiation.
These accidents shaped public perception for decades.
Context matters. According to comprehensive studies, nuclear energy causes 0.03 deaths per terawatt-hour of electricity generated when including all accidents. By comparison, coal causes 24.6 deaths per terawatt-hour, oil causes 18.4, natural gas causes 2.8, and even biomass causes 4.6. Wind causes 0.04 and solar 0.02. Modern reactor designs address the specific failure modes of past accidents.
So statistically, it's among the safest?
By this metric, yes. But statistics don't capture public psychology. Catastrophic but rare events create deeper fear than steady, distributed harm. Coal air pollution kills tens of thousands annually in the U.S. alone. But those deaths are invisible and gradual. A single nuclear accident is visible and traumatic, even if fewer people are harmed.
Has public opinion changed?
Significantly. In the U.S., 72% now favor nuclear energy, up from roughly half in the 1980s to 90s. Those who strongly favor outnumber those who strongly oppose by 5 to 1. Globally, 56% of EU respondents believe nuclear will positively impact their lives over the next 2 decades.
But there's still a knowledge gap?
Critical. Only 26% of Americans have heard of SMRs, and only 15% feel very well informed about nuclear energy. Among those who are well informed, 66% strongly favor nuclear. The correlation between knowledge and support suggests public education is key to acceptance.
What about cybersecurity? These new reactors are heavily digital, right? What makes them different?
This is where the AI nuclear convergence creates unprecedented risk. SMRs designed specifically for AI data centers face unique cybersecurity vulnerabilities that traditional reactors never encountered.
What makes them different?
SMRs for big tech. AI operations rely heavily on advanced digital controls, substantial automation, remote operation capabilities, and deep integration with AI and machine learning systems. This dramatically increases the attack surface. The deployment model typically involves many reactors in diverse, sometimes remote locations. Instead of on-site staff at each reactor, multiple units are run from centralized control centers, increasing reliance on secure communication networks and cloud infrastructure. Google Kairos, Amazon Energy Northwest, and Amazon X Energy partnerships follow that model.
So more efficient, but more vulnerable?
Precisely. Many SMR's designs use highly integrated digital control systems, making them susceptible to advanced cyber threats, false data injection, manipulation of sensor readings, exploitation of software vulnerabilities. The Stuxnet virus that destroyed Iranian centrifuges proves cyber weapons can cause catastrophic physical damage. The standardized modular design of SMRs creates a systemic risk. A single undetected vulnerability in software, hardware, or a supply chain component could affect multiple units or entire fleets simultaneously. When tech companies deploy identical reactor designs across multiple sites, they're also deploying identical vulnerabilities.
That's terrifying.
It gets more complex. The integration of AI in both reactor control and the consuming data centers introduces unique cyber-physical risks. AI platforms are vulnerable to attacks like data poisoning, evasion, or model extraction, which could undermine safety protocols or disrupt operations. A compromised AI system could potentially manipulate both the reactor controls and the data center operations simultaneously.
What about the components themselves?
The supply chain for SMRs is broader and involves more third-party vendors than traditional reactors, raising the risk of supply chain attacks, where malicious actors compromise digital components before installation. The complex global supply chain for SMR components, shared digital infrastructures, and their connection to sensitive commercial cloud operations elevate the risk of sophisticated nation-state attacks.
And they're designed for remote operation?
That's the cost efficiency driver. SMRs are often designed for remote monitoring and control, requiring critical systems to be connected to networks, potentially including the internet. This limits traditional security practices like air gapping, physically isolating systems from unsecured networks, which were standard in older nuclear facilities.
Does the government recognize these risks?
Recent U.S. government actions have increasingly integrated AI and energy policy, treating the massive data centers at nuclear sites as critical infrastructure essential to national security. The Department of Energy and congressional reports warn that our reliance on these concentrated power hubs creates a strategic vulnerability, making them prime targets for sophisticated cyber warfare. The annual threat assessment by the U.S. intelligence community explicitly identifies the infrastructure supporting AI as a key area of concern for foreign interference.
So these aren't theoretical threats.
Industry assessments confirm that the digitalization of nuclear power and the sheer scale of AI energy demand expand the attack surface for espionage and nation-state sabotage. Because AI requires massive round-the-clock power, a successful attack wouldn't just flicker the lights, it could trigger an immediate, large-scale collapse of the AI-dependent services that now run our economy and critical infrastructure.
What's being done about this?
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission requires cybersecurity measures under 10 CFR 73.54. Some modern SMR designs integrate cybersecurity from the beginning, an improvement over older plants. Industry experts emphasize continuous threat intelligence, rigorous supply chain vetting, and cyber-resilient control architectures. However, they also recognize that unknown unknowns, where new forms of attacks or systemic failures emerge, are a persistent challenge. The novelty and complexity of digital technologies create new, untested risks. Coordinated attacks exploiting common vulnerabilities across multiple SMRs represent a significant, possibly systemic risk scenario that demands advanced defensive measures.
It sounds like an arms race.
It is. As tech firms accelerate efforts to integrate SMRs with next-generation computing platforms, The interconnected risks between AI, energy, and network infrastructure are increasing. Regulatory bodies recognize these challenges and are developing new standards. But the push for rapid deployment brings a need for vigilant, adaptive, and proactive cybersecurity strategies.
What about nuclear weapons proliferation?
SMRs present mixed proliferation risks. Extended refueling cycles reduce opportunities for diversion. Some designs operate for 30 years without refueling. However, widespread deployment complicates oversight. The IAEA currently provides comprehensive verification for only 75 of 190 monitored states before adding thousands of small reactors globally.
I keep hearing about this HALEU fuel. What's the concern?
High-assay low-enriched uranium is enriched between 5% and 19.75% uranium-235, much closer to weapons grade at 90% than traditional reactor fuel at under 5%. Many advanced SMRs, including TerraPower's Natrium reactor powering Wyoming's data centers, require HALEU for efficient operation. This makes the fuel more proliferation attractive.
Can inspectors verify it?
That's the problem. TerraPower's design uses opaque molten sodium coolant that physically prevents inspectors from accessing and verifying fresh fuel once loaded. There's currently no international consensus on safeguarding these designs. We're being asked to trust, not verify, fundamentally contrary to non-proliferation principles.
Can regulators actually handle this expansion?
The NRC faces severe institutional constraints. It takes an average of 148 days to hire one employee, nearly double the federal standard. 1/3 of staff is retirement eligible.
What about international oversight?
The IAEA's safeguards budget represents 39% of its regular budget, but overall funding isn't growing commensurately with demands. By 2035, approximately 1,000 small reactors could be installed globally, a qualitatively different inspection challenge from monitoring a few hundred large centralized plants. The IAEA must scale its capacity to match this dispersed, diverse reactor fleet.
This isn't just a U.S. story, is it?
In June 2025, the World Bank ended its long-standing ban on nuclear funding, a momentous policy reversal. President Ajay Banga stated that electricity is a fundamental human right and the foundation of development. The bank will partner with the IAEA to provide technical assistance and standardize regulations for SMR deployment in developing countries. It addresses historical barriers that limited nuclear power to wealthy nations. However, it introduces complex geopolitical dynamics. The U.S. FIRST program provides capacity-building support to partner countries, ensuring they meet highest non-proliferation standards while competing with Chinese and Russian reactor exports. This isn't just about energy, it's about establishing century-long strategic relationships through nuclear cooperation.
What do the critics say?
Significant concerns remain. Environmental groups argue nuclear remains vulnerable to catastrophic accidents, with plant enclosures not designed to withstand all potential attacks.
How does the industry respond to the waste issue?
The industry's answer? Small modular reactors, or SMRs. They aren't just smaller, they change the logistics of the fuel cycle entirely. By extending refueling cycles up to 30 years and using factory-fabricated modules, the industry aims to minimize on-site handling and reduce the physical footprint of waste.
30 years is a long time.
But radioactive waste lasts much longer.
Arya, show me the real cost of these SMRs.
Nuclear projects have historically faced cost overruns and lengthy timelines. NuScale's cancellation when costs tripled demonstrates ongoing challenges. Critics point to France's Flamanville EPR, where power is projected to be 3 times as expensive as competitive renewable sources. Then there's the thirst. Nuclear plants are water hungry. 840 cubic meters for every ton of uranium. This high water demand makes plants vulnerable to drought and heat waves. In the United States and France, heat waves have previously forced plants to shut down or drastically reduce their power output.
Arya, synthesize this for me.
The evidence suggests nuclear, renewables, and energy storage must work together, not compete. Current projections show that only about half of AI's quadrupled energy demand by 2030 will be met by renewables. Without nuclear baseload power, utilities risk increased reliance on natural gas. Goldman Sachs forecasts that 60% of new data center load will be gas-powered through 2030. The International Energy Agency emphasizes that grids need dispatchable power that renewables alone cannot currently provide at scale. Nuclear offers grid stability, while renewables provide increasingly cost-effective clean energy. Advanced energy storage and AI optimization can manage their integration. This isn't about choosing one technology. It's about deploying all available tools to meet climate targets while maintaining energy security.
But who's making these decisions?
That's complex, Mark. This nuclear renaissance is happening through both market forces and policy decisions. Only 26% of Americans have heard of SMRs, yet fundamental decisions about our energy future are being made by tech executives and policymakers.
Isn't that a failure of democracy?
The democratic question is more nuanced than it appears. The Atomic Energy Advancement Act passed the Senate 88-2, one of the most bipartisan votes in recent history, representing elected officials responding to constituent and expert input. Public hearings are occurring, though sparsely attended. This raises a deeper question. Is low public engagement a failure of democracy, or evidence that the public trusts elected representatives on complex technical matters? Compare this to highways, water treatment, or telecommunications infrastructure, all shaped by engineers and industry with public oversight, not direct public design. The question isn't whether experts should inform policy, but whether the public has a meaningful opportunity for input, and whether benefits and risks are equitably distributed.
Arya, final question. Are we solving one crisis by creating another?
We're managing competing risks rather than solving a simple problem. The evidence shows both the promise and the peril clearly. Tech giants are becoming kingmakers in our energy future, using their massive power demands to reshape nuclear policy. The public is funding the research and absorbing the risks through subsidies and liability caps, while private companies position themselves as primary beneficiaries.
The tech giants have unprecedented power to shape our energy infrastructure.
But maybe that's not inherently wrong, Daz, as long as the process is transparent, the benefits are shared, and the public has real oversight.
The critical question is whether we're brave enough to make these decisions democratically, with full public engagement and informed debate, rather than leaving our energy future to be determined by a few powerful actors behind closed doors, whether those actors are corporations or bureaucrats.
What about the cybersecurity risks? Those seem particularly acute for AI-powered data centers.
They are. The convergence of AI and nuclear creates vulnerabilities we've never faced before, but they're not insurmountable. The question is whether we're investing adequately in cybersecurity, whether regulators can adapt fast enough, and whether the industry prioritizes security over speed to market.
I started this investigation because the lights went out. The answer isn't simple. Nuclear power could be part of the solution to climate change and AI's energy demands.
Or it could create new catastrophic risks we're not prepared to manage.
The answer depends on the choices we make now. Do we invest in regulatory capacity?
Do we demand genuine public engagement and ensure benefits flow to communities, not just corporations? Do we prioritize cybersecurity? Do we require new reactor designs that can be inspected and verified?
Perhaps the real question, Mark, is whether we're wise enough to learn from history while embracing innovation. Nuclear accidents like Chernobyl and Fukushima happened because safety was compromised by flawed designs, inadequate oversight, and institutional failures. Modern reactor designs address those specific failures, but only if we maintain rigorous standards.
And if we don't?
Then we're gambling with both our energy future and our safety. The stakes couldn't be higher. Climate catastrophe on one side, potential nuclear risks on the other, with AI's energy demands forcing our hand. The atomic gamble isn't just about powering artificial intelligence. It's about whether we're smart enough to build a sustainable future together, with eyes open to both the promise and the peril.
In the end, this isn't a story about heroes or villains. It's about competing interests, imperfect choices,
and the urgent need to power a digital future while preserving a livable planet.
The atomic gamble is on. The question is whether we're playing the game wisely.